Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel, or if you're new here, welcome. In this video, I'm going to be sharing with you how I made a Peppa Pig inspired birthday cake for my little niece. I've been decorating cakes for about 12 years now, and it's one of my most favorite hobbies. I am self-taught, so if you guys want to see how I made this cake, please keep watching. Okay guys, so when I make a birthday cake, I make my own fondant, and this is what I use to make my fondant. Jet Puff mini marshmallows. You want to make sure it's this brand because others leave little bits of gelatin, some powdered sugar. I use some gel color, Crisco, water, some gloves, and I need 2 bowls for this. You want to make sure you have 2 bowls. So what you do is you place your marshmallows in one bowl and your powdered sugar in another, and you're going to take 2 tablespoons of water and you're going to pour that directly onto your marshmallows. Give it a stir, and then you're going to put this into the microwave in 30-second increments until it is all melted. Once your marshmallows are completely melted, you want to add them to your powdered sugar, and you want to start mixing it together up until it's too hard to mix with your spoon. Then you want to start kneading it by hand, and you want to knead it until it kind of feels like Play-Doh. To make a big batch of colored fondant, all you need to do is add your gel color to your melted marshmallows. Start with just 1 drop. A little of this stuff goes a long way, and continue to add a drop at a time till you get the color you want. For this cake, I need a light green. Once you've made your fondant, you want to wrap it in cling wrap and place it inside a Ziploc bag. I did make 2 batches of the light green fondant. For this cake, I'm going to need several small amounts of different colored fondant, so I'll take the white fondant, divide it, and make my colored fondant by adding a tiny bit of gel color and kneading it until I have the color I want. And here's the colors I might need. I need white, a marbled brown, a beige, pink, blue, yellow, purple, red, and green. Now it's time to start my fondant work. This is some of my cake decorating supplies I've collected throughout the year. I have edible glitter, luster dust, petal dust, fondant cutters, sprinkles, fondant tools, and a whole closet full of cake decorating supplies, but this is what I'm going to use for now. Here I'm making a picnic blanket. I'll roll out some white fondant using a small fondant roller, measure out a square, and then I'll cut the fondant using a pizza cutter. Now I'll make the red squares for my picnic blanket. I'll roll out some red fondant and use a small square cookie cutter to make the squares. I'll add a stitch pattern to my squares by using this stitching tool that I actually found in the sewing department at Hobby Lobby, but I think it works great to add a stitch pattern to fondant. And here's all the squares with the stitch pattern. I'll take my blanket and glue my squares down using edible glue to create an alternating pattern of red and white. Next, I'll make my mini birthday cake. For this, I'll use the beige colored fondant, roll it out a little thick, and then I'll use a small circle cutter to create my cake layers. Now for the frosting, I'll take my pink fondant, roll it out a little thin, and use a flower cutter for my frosting. To create a dollop of frosting for the cake, I'll take a little ball of white fondant, roll it out into a thin rope, then I'll use a toothpick to create a tiny swirl. Time to finish my mini fondant cake. I'll take the cake layers, give them a light dusting with some yellow petal dust. This will give them a baked look. I'll brush on some edible glue to the first layer and then place the pink flower shaped fondant on the top, smooth the pink fondant down around the edges, and I'll repeat this process until I have a 3-layer cake. I'll add the tiny frosting swirl to the top of the cake using some edible glue. Then I'll brush on some more glue to the rest of the frosting to glue the sprinkles down. And I did make a mess with the sprinkles, but it's fine. Cake decorating can be a little messy sometimes. And here is the finished fondant birthday cake. I think it came out so cute. My little niece is gonna love it. I love the sprinkles on top and that little frosting swirl. Now I'll make a cake board for my mini birthday cake. I'll roll out some white fondant, use a small circle cutter, then I'll brush on some blue luster dust onto the cake board. I'm making some tiny roses for this cake, and to do this I'll roll out some red fondant really thin, cut out some thin strips using a pizza cutter, then I'll take the end of the strip and start rolling it in to create a tiny rose swirl. I'll need some bushes for my roses, so I'll take 2 different tones of green, roll them out into a rope, cut them, and then I'll take a small amount of each, roll them together to create a ball, and this will create kind of like a marble effect. I'm also making some trees, and to do this I'll take some green marbled fondant, add some CMC powder to the fondant. This will create gum paste and this will help my tree leaves dry super hard. I'll roll out the fondant really thin, use a flower cutter, and then I'll put them aside to dry. Now for the tree trunk, I'll take my marbled brown fondant, add some CMC powder, roll it out a little thick, freehand cut my tree trunk, add some texture using a fondant tool, and then set it aside to dry. Next, I'll make my fence. I'll cut out strips of fondant. I'll take 2 strips, glue them together with a toothpick between the 2 strips, and this will help keep the fence upright. To create a grain texture to the fence, I'll use a fondant knife tool. Then I'll dust them with some brown petal dust to really bring out that grain effect on the fondant. Okay guys, here is all the fondant work I'll be using to decorate my birthday cake. I have the picnic blanket, my birthday cake, my wood fence, my tiny roses. I did decide to make some yellow ones, and you can really see the wood grain on the fence. The petal dust really brings it out. My bushes, my leaves, and I know it doesn't look like much, but it will all come together. Next, I'll cover my cake board, and here I am saying hi to everyone. I'm such a dork, but anyway, I'll roll out my green fondant using my larger rolling pins. The cake board is quite big, so I'll need a full batch of fondant. I always like to have more than I need, but once it's big enough to cover the cake board, I simply place the fondant over the board. I'll use my fondant smoother to help get it in place, and then I use a pizza cutter to cut the excess fondant out, and then I'll smooth out the edges. Now that my cake board is covered with fondant, I'll cover the edges with some ribbon. I'll use my edible glue, and I do this because I think it makes the cake board look a little nicer. Time to make the cake. So this cake is going to be a semi-homemade cake, and what I mean by this is that I'm going to be using a box cake mix, and I have no problem using a box mix. I think they are delicious. And then I'll make a chocolate ganache filling and an Italian meringue buttercream. You want to make sure that you follow the recipe given. Because I live in a higher elevation, I use the high altitude recipe. I add 2 tablespoons of flour, then the rest of my ingredients. add the eggs, water, and vegetable oil. I'll mix it all together and then pour it into an 8-inch greased and floured cake pan, and then I'll bake it. For the chocolate ganache filling, I'll need 12 ounces of semi-sweet chocolate chips and 2 cups of heavy cream. I'll heat the cream to a light boil, then place my chocolate chips into a mixing bowl. Once the cream is boiling, I'll pour it directly over the chocolate chips, and I'll use a whisk to mix everything together. The hot cream will begin to melt the chocolate chips, and then I'll just keep whisking until everything is combined. And this is the consistency that you are looking for, smooth and glossy. Now for my Italian meringue buttercream. I'll need my stand mixer with my whisk attachment, 8 large egg whites, 1 3/4 cup of granulated sugar, half a cup of water, 1 teaspoon vanilla, and 1 pound of unsalted butter. I'll also need my kitchen thermometer, a spatula, and a saucepan with a lid. I start by pouring the sugar and water into the saucepan on low to medium heat. I'll give it a stir and let it come to a boil, but I want to make sure to mix it throughout this time. I'll place my egg whites into my mixer, but I won't turn it on just yet. I want my sugar to reach 215 degrees. Once it does, I'll start my mixer. I want to start off slow so the eggs don't splash out for about a minute, and then I'll turn up the speed to high. I'll continue to whisk my egg whites until my sugar reaches 225 degrees. Once it does, I'll pour all of my boiling sugar onto my egg whites, and I want to make sure that I'm super careful when I do this because this sugar is extremely hot, and I'll let it mix for 10 minutes. This is what you want the mixture to look like after 10 minutes, and then I'll start adding the butter a little at a time, and I'll continue to whisk it on high speed until all the butter is added. The mixture will change and it will look a little soupy, but don't freak out like I usually do. Just keep mixing it on high speed until it combines and whips back up. Once it's whipped, I'll add my vanilla extract. And here's the Italian meringue buttercream. It's smooth, it's creamy, it's delicious, and it's ready to frost the cake. Now it's time to assemble the cake. I'll take the 2 cakes, level them off using this cake level tool. I think this tool makes it so much easier to do this, and you end up with even layers. Here I have my cake layers, the Italian meringue buttercream in a piping bag, the chocolate ganache filling, my cake board, and a spoon and a spatula. I'll place my first cake layer on the cake board, and then I'll add some ganache. I do stop to get my cake turntable. This is a good tool to have. It makes it so much easier to frost your cake. I'll smooth out the ganache, and then I'll pipe some buttercream around the edges to keep the filling in place, and then I'll repeat this process until I have all the cakes layered and stacked. Now it's time to add the first crumb coat. I'll pipe the remaining buttercream onto the cake, and then I'll use my spatula to smooth the buttercream out. I fill a cup with hot water, dip my spatulas in the cup, and use the warm spatula to get a smoother buttercream. Then I'll place the cake in the refrigerator for an hour before I give it the final crumb coat. For the final crumb coat, I'll add a bunch of frosting to the top of the cake, smooth it out, place my cake turntable that I've covered with wax paper on top of my cake, flip it upside down. I know this sounds a little crazy, but it helps me get a really smooth, leveled cake. I'll use my cake board as a guide as I add the buttercream and smooth it all out. The cake is now crumb coated and I'll put it back in the refrigerator for another hour. Time to cover the cake with fondant. I'll roll out my fondant using my rolling pins. I'll have to make sure it's rolled out big enough to cover the cake. Then I'll get the cake from the fridge, place it on the counter, pick the fondant up, and then I'll drape it over the cake and start to smooth it out. Using my hands, I tug the fondant lightly and smooth the fondant onto the cake as I continue to work towards the bottom. I'll cut any excess fondant off and use my fondant smoother to get a clean, smooth finish. Okay guys, it's time to finish the cake. Putting it all together is of course my favorite part. So I found Peppa Pig figurines and her family on Amazon. Because I didn't have enough time, I couldn't make them out of fondant, but I'm sure my little niece will be so happy to have these. I'm using chocolate ganache for my mud puddles because Peppa loves to play in the mud. And here is all my fondant work that I'm going to be using to decorate my cake. So I kind of have an idea on what I want the cake to look like. I want Peppa and Brother Pig on top playing in the mud puddle. And then I want Mommy Pig and Daddy Pig waiting for Peppa by the picnic blanket with her birthday cake. I first start by adding my bushes to the cake, and I use the little balls I rolled out, stack them together, and I use edible glue to keep them in place. Next, I'll start putting my tree together. I'll glue the trunk, add some bushes, and then the leaves. I'll add my tiny roses to the bushes using some of my edible glue. I'll glue down my picnic blanket and then I'll continue to work on my tree. I think adding all these little elements to the cake is going to bring it all together. I decided to add some apples to the tree, so I'm going to use some large red sprinkles and edible glue to keep them in place. I'll pour some ganache on top of the cake and I'll smooth it out, and then I'll put Peppa and her brother playing in the mud puddle. So at this point, I didn't realize my camera wasn't recording. I do apologize. I added the fence, a few more bushes, some chocolate rocks, and a few mud puddles, and the birthday cake. Okay guys, here is how the cake looks like so far. I think it looks so cute. My little niece is going to love it. I have Peppa and her brother playing in the mud puddle. I'm going to continue to add more fondant work and maybe a few more chocolate rocks. Now I'll do some piping using the chocolate ganache. I'm not very good at piping, so I do use a stencil to help guide me, and I think it looks pretty good. I'll add a few more mud puddles, glue Mommy Pig and Daddy Pig down using some ganache, and then I think this cake is done. Okay guys, here is the finished Peppa birthday cake. I love how it turned out and my little niece is going to love it. Here is Peppa and Brother Pig playing in the mud puddle. I added another tree on top and I think it makes the cake stand out. Here is Mommy Pig waiting for Peppa with the birthday cake and it looks so cute. I just love making all these little elements. And here is Daddy Pig with standing by the piping work that I did. My little niece's name is Eliana, but we call her Ellie, and I just think she's going to love this cake. Please let me know what you guys think of my cake in the comment box below. And here is that wooden fence. You can really see the wood grain on it. And I also made her some cupcakes, and I'll show you guys how I put those together. I made the cupcakes using the same cake mix, and then I got these pink glittered cupcake wrappers at Hobby Lobby. I found these really cute Peppa Pig lollipops on Amazon, and I thought they would be perfect as cupcake toppers. I placed the lollipop inside the wrapper, and then I put the cupcake in place. I piped some pink Italian meringue buttercream, then I added some sprinkles, and I think they look so cute. I'll leave a link in the description box for the lollipops if you guys are interested in those. Okay guys, that is it for this video. I really hope you liked it. I know it's kind of long, but I wanted to show as much as possible. Please remember to like, subscribe, leave a comment, and hit that bell button so you are notified every time I upload a new video. Check out the links below, and I will see you guys next time in the next video. Bye!